I hope this video is reaching you before you start looking at homes, but especially before you make an offer on a home. In this video, we are going to be talking about items, things that you need to be looking out for in a home, specifically about the exterior of the home. So let's dig in. I know this is incredibly irrelevant, but I got a whack haircut yesterday, so I'm wearing a hat. I'm really not a huge hat guy, and honestly, I'd rather not be wearing one for a video, but I've got a lot of stuff I want to say, and I didn't want to push off this video, so here we are. So number one on this list, and potentially one of the most expensive components on your home to fix, and that would be the roof. Having even the slightest idea of what to look for in a roof is going to give you a great idea into future costs and also future headaches. And during a showing, I think it's one of the most important things to make sure that you lay eyes on. Let me start by saying this. Winter in Minnesota can be absolutely brutal on a roof. There are a lot of things to consider, like the actual weight load from snow being on your roof, the buildup of ice dams, the freeze-thaw cycles, and all the sub-zero temperatures that we experience. All of these things just shorten the lifespan of a roof. A roof that may be fine in other places around the country, specifically a southern state, could be considered near the end of its life here or even a safety hazard. And that's just because the climates are so different. We face a lot of different things than other parts of the country. Now, I mentioned ice dams. If you don't know what an ice dam is when snow on your roof melts in warmer places near the attic, but will then refreeze at the colder eaves. So this basically creates like a ridge of ice, typically on the edge of your roof, that will appear as just like a big chunk of ice, but it can actually trap water behind that ice, which then leads to the issues that we see with ice dams. Ice dams can cause leaks, mold, damage to the insulation, damage to the shingles on your roof in general. So when you're looking at a roof, it's important to look for uneven or sagging edges, any heavy ice shield lines, or visible signs of water staining in certain parts on the roof. When left untreated, ice dams can seriously be a big issue. However, there are ways to mitigate it. One, a roof rake is a great invention, and just keeping snow buildup off your roof is going to stop ice dams from forming. But a personal favorite of mine is the stuff called like heat tape or heat wire. I'm not even too sure. Obviously, they're not a paid sponsor of this video, but essentially you run very thin wire along the edge of your roof in like an S-shaped pattern, and you plug it in. It stays warm, not too warm, but just warm enough to keep ice from forming, keeping ice dams off your roof. Pretty simple design, pretty smart invention. I think if you'd rather not have to shovel or rake off your roof, these little heat lines can be a great solution to that. And also kind of in line with that, something you should be making note of is like the roof pitch or the steepness of the roof, and also the material that that roof is made out of. Obviously, a steep roof is going to shed snow a lot more than a flatter roof. Those flat roofs are going to allow for more snow to accumulate on the roof, holding that weight a lot longer, which in turn just runs the risk higher of potential issues. Also, in regard to the snow, it's very important to note what material your roof is made out of. A metal roof is going to get rid of snow. It's going to be able to fall off a lot easier than the likes of an asphalt shingle roof. And speaking of material, it is very important to note what material that roof is made out of, as the lifespan of these different materials really can vary. And I should note that most insurance companies, especially here in Minnesota, do take into consideration the material and the age of the roof. An older roof can mean higher premiums, limited coverage, or they may even require getting the roof replaced in order to close on the home. So you've got your asphalt shingles. Maybe I'll throw in a picture somewhere. Pretty standard. Probably when most people think of shingles, this is what they're picturing. They're also known as 3-tab shingles. Typical lifespan on these is anywhere from 10 to 20 plus years. Then you have your architectural asphalt shingle. Again, probably what you're picturing when you think of shingles on a roof. The architectural shingles are going to give you a little bit more lifespan. They say anywhere between 20 to 30 plus years on those. And then we start moving into like some more different materials. Metal roofs, usually made out of steel and aluminum. Those can last from anywhere to 40 to 70 plus years. More expensive upfront, yes, but I mean, twice, maybe 3 times the lifespan. Then we've got the cedar shakes shingles, which is insane to try and say without screwing up. Those are rated for between 20 and 40 years. Very classy, very nice look. And then you get into the real bougie material. You got your slate or tile roofs, which will last anywhere from like 50 to 100 plus years. Again, with the longer lifespan, you're paying more up front. However, in the long run, it may be more worth it to go that route. Spend the money up front. And so like I was saying, it is very important to note the material that the roof is made out of and to note what condition it's in, because in the event that you need to get the roof replaced, you should know that obviously it's expensive, but also it is seasonal up in here in Minnesota. No one's getting a new roof in January. And because of that, because you can't really do a roof in the winter, a lot of roofing companies, when it's go time, when spring hits and it's nice out, they're freaking busy. So there's a chance that you might get pushed back to the end of the line and be months out from a new roof. And so if you're looking at a house that's going to need a roof replacement soon, well, that's like a major negotiating point. That's something that you're gonna have to think about. Would you like to move forward? Would you like to see if the sellers are gonna replace the roof? Are you gonna ride it out? That's all, you know, very case by case. But my point is, this is why it's important to be looking at the roof, checking these things out, making sure you're not gonna be too surprised come inspection time to find out that the roof is 50 years old and you were like, I thought it was brand new. Okay, and then one more very important thing to be looking at when you're checking out a roof, you can do this from the outside, is trying to just gauge the ventilation and insulation situation. Also, ventilation, insulation situation sounds like a line from an Eminem song. That was not intentional. Pretty cool though. Anyways, from the outside, you can often spot poor attic ventilation. If you're seeing very few vents, or maybe some of the soffits are blocked, those are issues that can lead to ice dams, higher heating bills, and in general, a shorter roof lifespan. Okay, so what have we learned so far? The roof is not just cosmetic. It's structural, it's financial, and it will affect your insurance. And just a quick look during a showing can really save you a lot of headaches in the future. To me, I mean, I think depending on your situation, the roof like really can be a make or break when purchasing a home. And it's just like a real bummer to look at a home, fall in love with it, make an offer, you get so excited, and then you get the inspection and they're like, hey, the roof is shot. And you might be like, I guess I didn't even think to look. And again, that's why we look. I'm not saying you have to go study roofs and know everything about it. That is what the inspection is for, but you can brush up enough to be able to look at something and say, okay, red flag, green flag. I think that's the bare minimum. This doesn't look terrifying, so let's say the roof is decent. Also, I should note, a lot of the time, people will disclose the age of the roof in the seller's disclosure, especially if it's a newer roof. If it's like less than 8 years old, that's kind of like a flex to be like, hey, we got a new roof. You don't have to think about that for 25 years. But not always do you have the information like that on the age of the roof. So use these tools, these things to look out for to kind of help judge the overall condition of the roof. Okay, number 2, we're moving on to siding. Things to check out for on the siding would be rotting, warping, or swelling, especially on a wood or like an LP style siding. You're gonna wanna look out for cracks, dents, hail damage, looking for gaps near windows and doors where maybe water can get in. And a big one is looking for mismatched panels, which could suggest that maybe some work was done, or worse, that some damage was kind of just patched up or patched over. So here are some things to think about. Obviously in Minnesota, we have some pretty extreme temperature swings from summer to winter. In the summer, it's very humid, so it's not uncommon for things to expand. And then the winter hits and it gets brutally cold and things start to contract. This can cause cracking on vinyl and fiber cement. This can warp wood. It can also loosen fasteners, which is something you don't really think about. And when those fasteners get loose and the siding starts to fail, that's when you run the risk of moisture getting in, which in turn can be a rather expensive repair depending on the severity of it, because moisture intrusion can be a major risk, I mean, in any part of the home. You have to think that between snow and ice and like wind-driven rain that comes in sideways and runoff from the melt in the spring will all do a number on your siding. And any damaged or poorly installed siding can lead to rotting sheet sheathing behind the siding, which, I mean, no, let's just stay away from that, because that will cause mold inside the walls, can cause the insulation to break down, which can just kind of be a domino effect of more issues. And the worst part is that a lot of these damages are kind of like hidden, so it may take a while for you to realize it or to find it. And then by the time you find it, you know, you could be in a position where, hey, water's been getting into this piece of siding for 2 years now. We never noticed it. And the whole wall is just like, you know, moldy or rotted out. Obviously, it can get very bad and can be insanely expensive to fix. And I mentioned earlier these freeze thaw cycles that we experience here in Minnesota. That can really have this effect to make small issues become big, scary issues. Those tiny cracks or gaps that you see in the summer may appear to be harmless, but in the winter, water will get in there and freeze, and then the water expands, and that just causes way more damage. And it does it pretty quickly. So before you go in the home, make a quick lap. Check out the siding. You don't have to go through with a fine-tooth comb, but just kind of look for any major or minor cracking or anything like that where you might say, hey, could this be an issue if water were to get in here and then freeze? I would also like to note something that causes damage that most people don't think about, but something that, I mean, I see honestly more than I thought I would be damage from woodpeckers. Yes, woodpeckers, the bird, woodpeckers. In Minnesota, especially near trees and lakes, woodpeckers definitely do their share of damage on siding. Wood siding, engineered wood, kind of doesn't matter. Those suckers will go to town, and they definitely cause damage. And even these little small holes that they're making, again, it's kind of like what I was just talking about. They make a hole in your siding, moisture gets in there, it freezes, it causes damage, makes things worse. You gotta be on the lookout for woodpeckers up here. I'm serious. I've even seen people mention in seller's disclosures like, hey, we've got a woodpecker problem, which frankly is pretty good information to know. So when you're looking at the house, keep an eye out for woodpecker holes, because those suckers will come back too and just continue to wreak havoc year after year. So for the roof, I talked a lot about ice dams. Ice dams can also affect the siding too. When these ice dams form on your roof, water can often sometimes run behind the ice dam, and even more so behind the siding, instead of dripping cleanly away like it should. And so this can lead to some pretty serious staining, which can be fairly cosmetic, but it can also cause soft spots in the siding and can also cause hidden rotting on lower pieces of siding or corners. And then in regard to maintenance and insurance, again, certain siding materials like older wood or failing engineered wood can obviously increase maintenance costs, but it can also affect your insurance risk, which could affect your premium. But also something worth noting, which could be kind of true about this entire list, is that seeing an issue on the siding or the roof, or frankly any of these like big ticket items on a home, could always signal to deferred upkeep in other places of the home as well. I understand that siding, re-siding a home, putting a new roof on a home, that's not cheap, and it's a big undertaking. But you might find yourself asking like, okay, if the siding isn't this bad of condition, or the roof, you know, like roof is very important. If you're deferring the maintenance and letting it get to a certain point that's so bad, you know, what's like under the hood? What else are we going to see in this home, or what else might come up that is just due to deferred maintenance? And then similar to the roof, in the event that siding needs to be replaced, that's seasonal work. You can't necessarily replace siding at any point in the winter. So again, if that's an immediate fix that needs to be done in the home, might be a big thing to consider. Also, typically, not always, but when replacing siding, that's often paired with, you know, replacing some old trim on the exterior or flashing, depending on the condition. Some contractors might even say, hey, as long as we're doing all this, you could probably replace this window or these windows or every window. So what can appear to start as, you know, fixing maybe one part of this siding on the home could quickly turn into like, hey, as long as we're doing all this, you might as well do all this. And if that really wasn't in the cards, if you don't have the budget for that, that could be a serious factor in whether or not, like, you know, this is the home for you, or if you should go through with this purchase. So definitely important to know. Just like the roof, I'd like to kind of talk about the different materials that can be used as siding. Typical ones that we see here in Minnesota and their life expectancy. So fiber cement, also I'm pretty sure typically known as like Hardy board, James Hardy. You may not off the top of your head know know what this material is, but I guarantee you've seen it. The life expectancy is from 30 to 50 plus years. And the cool thing about this stuff is that it's very resilient when it comes to freezing temperatures, moisture, snow, things like that. Fiber cement is a man-made material made from sand, cement, and cellulose fibers, also known as wood pulp. And those fibers give it strength and flexibility, while the cement makes it resistant to pests, fires, and moisture. Yes, I said fire. Fun fact, fiber cement does not burn. So maybe not the worst thing to have wrapped around your entire house. Next one, metal siding. Again, usually steel or aluminum. Average lifespan is between 30 to 50 plus years. And I think the biggest benefit to steel siding, other than the fact that it's incredibly waterproof, is that it is very durable. Maybe the only downside is that it is way more susceptible to showing like hail damage. So that is something worth considering with metal siding. Then we have vinyl siding, probably the most common. Everybody sees it, everybody knows it. The lifespan on that is between 20 to 40 plus years. And while quality vinyl siding is very durable, it can become brittle and frail and crack in cold enough temperatures. So something to remember, something to consider there as well. Then we have engineered wood. The lifespan on that is between 20 and 30 years. Engineered wood is cool because it does give you that wood look, but it does offer better moisture resistance than the likes of actual wood, natural wood. Natural wood siding typically will last from between 15 to 25 years. However, it does require frequent staining or painting in order to kind of keep up with the exposure that it gets here in Minnesota due to the humidity and the moisture. And then of course there's brick or stone siding for a home. I think they just say 100 plus years on a brick home. Obviously the most durable of all these that I've gone through, but a very high upfront cost. And then last one that doesn't come up as much, but something that we see in Minnesota all the time is stucco siding. The expected lifespan on stucco is between 40 to 60 plus years. Of course, if it was properly installed and then maintained. And personally, I think it's kind of surprising. There's quite a bit of debate between stucco or not. Some people love stucco. Some people are like, that's a red flag. I do not want a stucco house. I will say, I don't think stucco is bad. It's just rather unforgiving. I think it looks nice and has a very specific quality about it, but so long as it's installed correctly with proper moisture control systems, it can last that 40 to 60 years. It's when it's installed poorly that it can hide some pretty serious damage. Important things to look for when you're looking at stucco is cracking, obviously, but particularly horizontal, or what they call the stair step cracking, where you can see it kind of work its way down. You're also going to want to look for any staining or discoloration. You'll want to look for soft spots, specifically near the base of the home, and then making note of where the roof and the wall meet. Those intersection points, making sure everything looks good there. There's no major cracks or anything like that. So my little recap on siding, it's your home's first line of defense when it comes to cold, moisture, wind. And when you're looking at siding, it's important to note that it's not just all about curb appeal. You got to be thinking about durability, energy efficiency, and more so than anything, avoiding expensive surprises when the weather starts to change. Okay, so we've looked at the roof, we looked at the siding. Now we're gonna make note of the grading and the gutters, the G's, baby. And the things you're gonna wanna look for in regard to grading and gutters would be making sure that the ground slopes away from the house at all times as best it can. Keep moisture away from the foundation. You want water away from the house. The downspouts coming off the gutters, they should extend at least 6 feet from the house. Again, we keep moisture away from the house. Water stays away from the house. So if the ground is sloping away from the house, if you got those downspout gutter extensions, you're gonna wanna make sure you look for any standing water, eroded soil, or signs of just like poor drainage in general, anywhere around the immediate area of the foundation of the home. And then pretty easy to tell if a gutter is shit or not. So shouldn't be too hard to decipher that, but it is important, to the best of your ability, check if any of those gutters are overflowing or clogged. Okay, so gutters. What do gutters do? Gutters control where all the roof runoff goes. In Minnesota, that runoff is not only water, but also the sometimes massive snowmelt that we have in the spring. And if it's not managed well, that's going straight into your foundation. Like I said, the snowmelt that we experience here can be pretty intense, like hundreds of gallons of water in a short amount of time. So if you're missing gutters, or if they're undersized, or if they're all clogged up with leaves, you're going to be left with water pooling up at the foundation, which is just working away at your home's foundation. Also, going back a third time to ice dams, because I just love talking about ice dams. Ice dams can play a huge role in seriously messing up your gutters. An ice-filled gutter with all that weight can literally cause it to pull off, like rip off from the side of the house over time. Ice dams can also trap water against the fascia, and like I mentioned earlier, force the water behind the siding. So not only is it important to have gutters to help keep the water away, but it's important to make sure that these gutters are doing their correct job and not forcing even more problems to happen because of ice dams. When I'm in a showing and I'm in the basement and we see staining on the basement walls, or discoloration, or cracking, or what looks like issues or efflorescence, almost always I'm like, let's see what the grading looks like. Do they have gutters on this home? Because more often than not, a lot of those issues are caused by this water pooling up on the foundation and then working away at the block foundation. And like I said, it's pretty surprising how often you see those issues and then you go outside and you say, wow, this house doesn't have gutters. Also, without proper gutters, water coming off the roof, it doesn't run through the gutters and off the downspouts. It just kind of cascades right down the side of the home. And that can cause rotting at the trim and soffits. That can cause staining, and it can also just cause premature siding failure. So when you're looking at the home, when you're looking at the gutters, make sure that they're securely attached and then that they're not sagging. Make sure that there are downspouts at corners. Keep an eye out for downspouts at the bottom of the gutters, and ideally there'd be a 6-foot downspout running off that. And then of course, any heavy rust, any separation, or any missing sections, definitely be on the lookout for those. Now, grading. Grading is just a term for the slope around the home's foundation. And like I said, probably 10 times already, the grading should move water away from the foundation, not towards it. So why is grading so critical in Minnesota other than just keeping water away from the house? Well, again, we have this thing called freeze-thaw. And here in Minnesota, the soil will actually expand when it's wet and freezes in the winter. And this can create pressure on the foundation walls and cracking and shifting over time. And then when the springtime rolls around, this is kind of interesting. The ground can still be frozen, but we can simultaneously be experiencing a spring melt. So what happens? Snow melts, water hits the ground. Instead of soaking into the frozen ground, it'll just run off wherever it goes. So if your grading on your house is sloped into your foundation, water hits the ice straight into the foundation. I think you see the issue here. So yes, grading is super important. So when you're at your showing and you're looking at the grading, make a couple notes. The soil should be sloping away from the house for the first 6 to 10 feet. Make sure there's no low spots or puddling near the foundation. Also make note if there's mulch or landscaping piled right up against the siding. You hate to see it, but someone may be hiding grading by slapping a bunch of mulch on there and making it appear as though that water is moving away from the house, when in reality it could be flat with the house or even sloping in. And then one last thing, when you're looking at that foundation, try and see if there's any extra exposed foundation, as that can be a sign of erosion, like the ground eroding away, which can be bad grading, water sitting on certain spots near the foundation and then pushing that soil down or away. And so some general red flags to look out for as far as grading and gutters go. Obviously, you don't want to see downspouts dumping right next to the house. If you see soil buildup against the siding or the brick, and then evidence of water staining on the foundation walls, those are some red flags definitely worth investigating further, looking into, or at the very least seriously considering what you're looking at. And my final note on grading and gutters, the biggest issue with all of this is the issues that it causes to the foundation and to the basement. It can lead to wet basements, foundation cracks, even mold, or just general structural problems, which are all very expensive. Okay, so we've checked out the roof, we've checked out the siding, we looked at all the grading and the gutters. Now we're gonna look at something that's very commonly just kind of overlooked and not really thought about. And I'm talking about the driveway and just kind of hard surfaces in general. When I say hard surfaces, I mean obviously the driveway, but also walkways and sidewalks, patios, and then front steps and or stoops. Now in all of these things, you're gonna wanna make sure you're looking for cracks, heaving, settling, huge, especially in, again, our freeze thaw climate that we have here. If you're lucky enough to be looking at a home after rain, you're gonna wanna be looking for any signs of puddling, as that can indicate poor drainage. And then just a little note, I mean, as long as you're checking stuff, if you have a really steep driveway, it might be worth it to consider just the general safety of that in the winter, and also the difficulty in snow removal on a very steep driveway. So cracking and heaving in the driveway and the sidewalks, things like that. Why is this an issue? Well, you could probably take a guess and get pretty close, but with these cracks in the material, water can get in, it can then freeze and then expand, and obviously just cause more damage. And without being fixed or addressed over time, it just causes heaving slabs, uneven surfaces, and some serious trip hazards. You'd probably be surprised, but a small crack in a sidewalk, maybe they're still level, there's just a little crack, in 2-3 years, you would be blown away at how that has become like a 2-inch tripping hazard. So another element of Minnesota winter, outside of the freeze thaw, that can really damage these hard surfaces is salt, like de-icing salt. The salt accelerates deterioration, and we see it a lot specifically in like garages, because in the winter you're out driving, you get all this snow and salt up on the bottom side of your car, get home at night, park in your garage, heated or unheated, that snow will fall off. That snow and salt combo will fall off and sit on the concrete or cement pad, whatever you have. And the amount of damage that this salt can do is like genuinely, it's like crazy. It's pretty surprising to see sometimes, but it'll literally break down concrete over time. Not only will it cause cracking and deteriorating, but it also eats away at the surface. It can be pretty gnarly. The whole snow and salt thing, it like really does a number on stuff out here. Even just snow removal in general. The force of a plow or even a shovel working away at your sidewalk or your driveway, I mean, it's all just over time, obviously deteriorating away at the driveway or the sidewalk. Winter is brutal in more ways than one, and even our sidewalks, even our driveways get beat up by it. It's pretty incredible. Also, I'd like to mention that drainage problems in a home often show up first on these hard surfaces. And what I mean by that is these hard surfaces will often reveal grading issues. Driveways sloping towards the garage, patios trapping water near the foundation, ice buildup in the winter from poor runoff. These hard surfaces really do a good job of portraying, you know, what's kind of happening throughout the year. You'll see it a lot in driveways. If there's a spot where water tends to pool up, after a few years, that is noticeably a damaged area of the driveway. So as you're walking up to the house, as you're walking around, kind of just make note of things like that. Obviously, it's inevitable. You're going to see some cracking on the sidewalk, maybe in the garage, maybe in the driveway. Not uncommon. If you see a crack, don't run away screaming. Just make note of the severity and understand that, hey, this is probably not going to just stop or get better on its own. Because of our climate and our seasons, it's just going to only get worse. And the only real solution is to mitigate the problem from there moving forward, to kind of just slow the rate in which it deteriorates. Typically in Minnesota, we'll see either concrete or asphalt for these hard surfaces. Concrete has a lifespan of between 30 to 40 plus years. It will crack or scale if it's poorly poured or just like overly salted, gets too much exposure to salt. And then asphalt, the average lifespan is between 15 to 25 years. Asphalt is more flexible, a little more forgiving to the freeze thaw cycles, but it does require sealing, not sealing like SEAL sealing, requires to be sealed every few years. And while it may be a little bit more resilient to the freeze thaw cycle, I do know from firsthand experience in the summer that stuff can get super hot and awfully soft, so you kind of have to be careful with it. So some things that you can look out for in your showing to kind of judge the condition of these hard surfaces. For the driveway, look for larger widening cracks. Like I mentioned, look for sections that maybe slope towards the garage. Look for sunken areas or heaving near the joints. And then also kind of keep your eyes peeled for any patch jobs. That can usually signal to a recovery recurring issue that's being proactively taken care of, but an issue nonetheless. For walkways and patios, look out for uneven slabs or lifted edges. Look out for crumbling or flaking surfaces, and then look out for water pooling or stains. For the front steps, make sure there's a solid attachment between the steps and the house. It's kind of surprising how often concrete steps will pull away from a house and there will be a pretty significant gap in there. And while you're at it, give the handrail a shake, make sure that sucker's nice and secure. So, very important, make sure you're looking at these things, make note of that stuff on the driveway and sidewalks even, because repairing them, it's either you remove it and do it again, or there's mud jacking, which is kind of a crazy process and pretty expensive, a lot of work. Okay, and then wrapping it up on the outside, a couple more things that I strongly urge you to check out. The air conditioner, typical lifespan is 10 to 15 years. Sometimes you can see the age on those things, so try and see if you can get an age on that air conditioner. Whether or not you see the age, you should still look for rust and corrosion or any bent fins on the actual mechanism inside. Always check and see if it's level. So many air conditioners are not sitting level, and it's super bad for the machine to be running like that. Typically, if it's not level, you can kind of assume that it's going to be an older machine, but you see it all. I've seen brand new air conditioners that are sitting crooked, and you're like, I can't believe that's a thing. Again, because of our crazy winters, the lifespan of air conditioners can be shorter due to those temperatures. It just, the freeze thaw, all that stuff, it just kind of causes a lot more stress on the machine than other climates. The exposure to winter in general, not only on the components can it be bad, but you have like an icicle fall off the edge of your roof, fly right in there and like damage one of the fins like I was mentioning. Some of the coils inside can get damaged from the weather, so make sure you're doing your best to try and check out for those. Also, I'm about to teach you something about air conditioners that you probably don't know, but they are rated based off a SEER rating, S-E-E-R, which stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio. And this rating basically indicates the efficiency of the cooling for the air conditioner. The higher numbers mean more energy savings. It's kind of easy to think of it like miles per gallon. Higher mile per gallon, higher SEER rating, just more efficient. And then probably somewhere near the air conditioner on the exterior of the home, you'll be able to see the furnace exhaust and intake pipes. They're usually PVC. And you might be like, Paul, what am I looking at a PVC pipe for? What am I even supposed to look at? How do I know it's good? Make sure that PVC pipe is a proper height above the grade. Make sure there's no sagging or cracks in those pipes, and make sure there's a clear separation between the intake and the exhaust. These things matter because snow or ice buildup can literally stop your furnace from working, and also poor placement, especially of the exhaust, can cause condensation, which can lead to icing issues. So it is important to kind of just lay eyes on that quick and be like, okay, that looks cool, moving on. If you can, if you're able to, check the gas meter and the electrical meter as well, as long as you're on the outside. Gas lines expand and contract in cold weather, so if you can, just look and see that it's mounted securely, there's no rust or dents or unsupported sections, and that there's clearance from zones where snow can accumulate. For the electrical meter or exterior service lines, ice and snow buildup can cause stress on those connections, so just make sure you look at if the base of the meter is secure, and make sure there's no loose conduit. If the home has a mini split system in place of the AC unit, lay some eyes on that, try and see if there's any damage. Maybe you can see a date on there, things like that. Definitely worth checking out. If that mini split or that AC unit is directly under the roof drip lines, red flag. If those exhaust pipes are too close to the grade, red flag. If you have rusted gas or electrical components, that's a red flag, baby. And if you've watched the video up to this point, I'm giving you the green flag because you're pretty well versed in the exterior of a home now. I hope you take my advice on this and use some of these things when you're looking at homes, but obviously don't get too into the weeds and don't feel like you need to be a professional at any of these things. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you should be able to, be aware of these things and then just kind of look and say, hey, does that look good or is that shot to hell? Anyways, I appreciate you watching. I realize I didn't even say it, but my name is Paul Winkleman. I'm a real estate agent here in the Twin Cities. If you have any questions, if you want to chat, hit me up, Instagram, email, phone number, leave a comment. So I appreciate you. Thanks for watching, and the hat era will be over soon, I swear. And I will see you on the next video. See ya.